Thank you very much. Good morning. I think you had a very interactive session on the administrative functioning of the state of Haryana. The structure of my presentation is that I have brought how the original plan emerged, the original plan. And then that's basically the past, what has happened in the last 50 years. And then what is the future? We have notified a master plan 2031 very recently. So that constitutes the second part. And then there is a immediate project of the smart city. That's the third, that's the present. I am listing that as the present. So I think it's an open house. You can just tell me which way, if any of the sessions gets long or you are not very comfortable with that, it will not be of much use to you, can tell me, I can go ahead with that. And we can focus on whichever session you want me to modulate. I'll just give you a brief background. Chandigarh's need emerged because Punjab lost its capital to Pakistan. The Lahore got into the city into the eastern part of the Punjab. So now we had to create a new capital. This capital project was the brainchild of Pandit Nehru and Cairo. They really steered it for a very long time in the initial phase. The selection of the site and a capital project the site was selected after the recce of the entire state of Punjab, which was unified at that time, which included Punjab, Haryana, Himachal. So the entire state was just one Punjab. And that recce was done, a considered view was taken whether we should have a new site or we can rebuild on one of the existing cities. A conscious decision was taken and they found a very interesting site on the foothills of the Shivaliks, which really made a very elegant site for development of a new city. The original plan was developed by two planners, American planner Albert Mayer and Matthew Nowicki, and this was a leaf-based plan. Basically, the idea was to develop it like a natural leaf feeds the entire thing. There were veins, and then there was a central core. The entire idea was that the selection of the site had two chores here around this. So he had kind of made a super block kind of a element in this, and the entire element was facing towards the hills. There were hills on this side, on the northern end.
Sir, the idea what was the reason why
Chandigarh क्यों बना? क्योंकि हमारा capital चला गया था. Punjab did not have a capital. Lahore was lost to Pakistan. So we needed a new capital for Punjab. So that's why a new capital had to be built, and they wanted it to be a most modern city, which will act as a model for the entire. That Pandit Nehru's brief to the new architect Corbusier was this only, that let this be a town unfettered by the traditions of the past. Because our town planning traditionally was basically on an old core. We had an old core city, and then there were developments all around, either a walled city or they were walled cities. Traditionally they were walled cities because they were part of there were 28 villages. This is an agricultural field. In the first instance, they decided that we should do away with the villages. So in the first stage, unfortunately, this plan was not implemented because one of the main, the Matthew Nowicki died in an air crash coming to India. So they had to, the other partner said that I'll not be able to carry forward this project. So they had to select a new architect. So the administrator, Mr. P.N. Thapar and the Chief Engineer P.L. Verma went around the world, and P.L. Verma. They were the two people who really decided the site, the mandate of the project, and then they started searching for the architect. So in the next plan, they searched for Corbusier, and he was a Swiss-born French architect, and he was kind of invited and did this project almost on a very, very low fee, which was very difficult. Basically, he wanted to implement his idea. His projects were not implemented very well in Europe. He has been working on a concept, and he formed an association called the SIAM, the Congress of International Architectural Modern. And 1923 he started postulating that theory. He started working on it. In 1942 he published a book on this. But he was never getting a site to build what he was kind of researching on. For 30 years of his research, he got this project at the age of 65. So when he was 65, he got this project. So he thought he'll work on this, and he gave this plan, which was basically evolving out of that Matthew Nowicki plan. Earlier the plan was kind of meandering in roads, but he converted that into a grid plan. These plans basically emerged out of the industrial revolution when car became the centric for movement. So this plan was quite, movement of the cars was very essential because he knew that cities will have a lot of cars. So that is why Chandigarh still has one of the best networks in terms of sustenance, because this was planned for a population of just 5 lakhs. Now we have more than 12 lakh people, but we still don't have that level of congestion. For double the design capacity, it's still manageable. We still have just 10-15 minutes of congestion in the city. But we have to take some action, otherwise it will keep choking in, because their plans have kind of overstepped to the limits. And now we have converted it. There were binding laws behind it. A very firm legislation was done, because when this city came up, there was no national building code. There was no UDPFI guidelines. So the regulation, that's very, very important, I think, because the city came into this format because the Capital of Punjab Development Regulation Act was formulated, the Preservation of Tree Act was formulated, a Periphery Control Act was formulated. He wanted that the city should just have this, the city should have just this core, and there should be no development all around, like all other cities. So this had a specific population densities, and he wanted that 8 kilometers initially and then 16-kilometer periphery should only be green around it, and we should not pulver with cities all around. Although with the bifurcation of the states, that has not happened. That idea is probably not, but he wanted the option of the planned development, so the Deputy Commissioner was empowered to be allowing planned development all around in this. Because of this, I think this is a kind of buffer which we have, and he's given us the opportunity to grow as a region now as compared to what it was done then. The whole plan was emanated to a human anatomy. He said that since it's an administrative town, the capital complex, which is the administrative head with the state assembly, with the legislature and the high court, will be placed at the topmost edge on the foothills of the Shivaliks as the head, and then the city center will be the heart, which will, the CBD, what we call as the central business district, will be the heart of the city, which brings in a lot of energy and to the economy and the movement of the people. And the western flank was the educational hub. We had the university here, the PGI, the Punjab Engineering College. So the western flank was one of the arms, which will create the human resource, and the eastern edge, which had the linkage to the railway station, will be the industrial area, which will be the second arm, where the human resource will be used. So that way it kind of compared, and the road network he called as the veins, where the people flow and where the energy and the system flow. So that's the veins of the body. So that's what his whole concept was, and we still try to maintain as much as possible in that context. The roads had a hierarchy from V1 to V7s, the V1s being the state highways, V2s which link it inside to the transport hubs like the bus stands, the airports and the stations, bus stations, and V3s are the roads encircling the sectors. The typical nerve, or what we call as the cell of this human body, was the neighborhood concept. He kind of devised that 80% of the human functions should be ideally held within 10 minutes of walking distance. So he created a unit, what we call as a sector now, that 80% of the human activity, especially of the children and the old, should happen within 10 minutes walking distance. And that's why he's decided to scale this to 800 meters by 1200 meters with a specific population density dependent on the area where the sector is placed. The population varies from 4,000 to 20,000 in a typical sector, because we have very low density sectors in the north and very high density sectors as we go south. This being the core, he designed the whole road network also around it. As I was saying, the peripheral roads were the V3 roads, which are high speed roads catering to movement of cars, because he knew that people are going to travel in faster modes of traffic. All buses, all cars move on the peripheral roads, and the public transport was also allowed to move on the V4 because it's a meandering market road. It was planned to be a meandering so that it's a slow speed road. He did not want it to be very high speed. All roads in the center of the sector are all meandering. So they tend to become slow in that sense. All important cultural and social activities are maintained around this road. There is a the markets are oriented in a manner, and the sector is divided into 4 components A, B, C, D in a order, and the numbering plan is also by an order. The sector placement numbers, everything is by an order. So there's a system to everything from the very initial thought. So the road network, the water supply, the sewage, everything was planned because city was on a sloping side. So except the water supply, everything had a natural gradient. The storm water was separately laid, the fire hydrant was separately laid, and then we had the sewage, which of course was on the natural gradient. There was a very comfortable gradient which managed the city from the very beginning. The initial phase, 40 square kilometers was acquired in phase 1, where we developed sector 1 to sector 30, and with a population of just 1,50,000 people. So this phase 1 is a very low density phase and had most of the areas which we now call as the core of the city. Phase 2 was acquired in 70s. We acquired about 30 more square kilometers, and we developed 17 sectors from 31 to 47, and for a population about 3.5 lakh people. So this was relatively almost double the density than the phase 1. We allowed more higher 4-story apartments in this case, and there are a lot of group housing in this category. Now, there is, as this I have already explained, this being the central cell of the city, the plan was introvert in nature. So there is most of the activity should ideally happen. We have a school, we have a religious facility, we have community centers, we have functions of cultural activity. So it divided the functions of a human body into 4: the living, the working, care of mind, body and spirit, and the circulation. That's what he kind of defined it, and that's how all integrated services were provided. The planning concepts, as I just said, there's a human anatomy angle to it, in which he tried to create a plan which is very balanced and hierarchical. So every facility, whether you compare it to an open space or to a education, health, water supply, all services, they have a hierarchy of systems in the whole thing, as per the original plan. But of course now there are deviations with the changes happening in the phase 3 and phase 2. The 4 functions I just explained: living, working, care of body, mind and spirit, and this movement. V7 hierarchy roads, as I said, the peripheral road was V3 roads, and the internal market road is called the V4 road. The road which goes in the 8th form is the V5, and the internal roads which connect them to the houses is the V6, and the cycle tracks and all of V7s. Cycle tracks and the pedestrian paths are V7s. So we had a system, and all road structures had a definite solution for sidewalks, the pedestrian movements, the green spaces as per the section of the road. So this was a pattern which was adopted across the city. That's why we have a lot of area which is green, because we have the place for the plantation of the trees, and then we have the places for people to walk, and we are able to now create cycle tracks along with that. So that's the set of having a full planned development all along. The city, of course, was to ensure that every person from all economic backgrounds should have the place for sun, space and vendor. Vendor is basically the greenery which we see in the city. The urban design, of course, wanted it. There are some key corridors which were called which had some institutional and commercial belts all along it, and which form the major image of the entire city. So the urban design of man cosmos order had the harmony of the built environment with the nature. That was very important, that every man has access to an open space, whether it is close to his house, then there are sub-sector level greens, then there are sector level greens, then there are city level parks. So there are different levels of parks which give them different activities and different recreational facilities. And of course there was iconic and climatic responsive architecture which he created, and which has been termed as the Chandigarh architecture. If everybody reads the history of architecture, this is a very important, and we get people from, because he designed only 3 or 4 buildings in Chandigarh: the Capitol Complex, the museum and the College of Architecture. The rest of the buildings evolved on the similar principles, because since he got in 4 British architects and 50 architects from the very beginning. So the process of planning, engineering, architects was very important from the very conception on every stage. Every intervention was done in a considered planned manner, because cost was a very important factor. I think the project was given a very low amount to do that, and architecture was responding to that. Sorry, I think I don't have the slide specifically for the style of architecture, because there are 13 types of housing categories done. Type 1 being for the CM and type 13 for the peon. So there were peon clusters, there were integration of the housings, and every housing from 1 to 13 is a typical example. As you go down in category, there were more open space. Since people were to shift from an agricultural society to an urban area, that's what most of the people did. So they were very used to open spaces. So the smallest house has a very large rear courtyard and a very small front courtyard. That gives them a very good public interacting space and a very good open space, because that costed very less to the government, because the land was not really taken as a value in that terms. That's why we are now facing problems that the phase 1, the densities are very low. We have as low densities as 1 person per acre, but to what our plan needs is 1100 persons per acre. So that's a huge disparity which we are creating in the city, and that is causing us a lot of issues of crime, disparity of overall services, and that there is a lot of controversy of north and south, because people who stay in north of the city, they have very low densities and a lot of social facilities, but people who stay in south have very less social and government facilities, so they feel deprived of that whole thing. Phase 1, actually above Madhya Marg, in the phase 1, I'll just show you. This is the Uttar Marg, this is the Madhya Marg, and this is the Dakshin Marg. So phase 1, it was divided into 3 parts. Above Madhya Marg, we have very low densities. We have still houses which are almost 1 acre, 8 canal houses or 10 canal houses, 11 canal houses in this core of the city. It is in these areas. The Chief Minister's houses are in sector 2 and 3. So these are actually government housing. The judges' houses are here. Most of the, so they're large houses, and then we have private houses in 8, 9, 10, which are very, very large, but they still constitute, since the people were, it was a very difficult city to kind of establish. Till Corbusier and his team was alive, the city was not getting inhabited, because this was basically meant for migrants, and the whole government process took 4-5 years to happen. But by then people had to live somewhere. They had either settled in the rehabilitation ministry in Delhi, had settled something in Jalandhar or in Delhi, or in, people had settled their lives. So the migrants who they were aiming at were not willing to shift then, because they had found some occupation, some business, some trade, some industry. So they had kind of settled down, and the initial people who were meant to settle here coming from Pakistan were very difficult to come. Then since the conversion of this whole city into 2 capitals and 1 union territory after 1966, when the reorganization of the states happened, suddenly there was an influx of people. Suddenly there was an influx of people because there were 3 governments. So basically it was the government city kind of funded, financed by the government. There were 33,000 government housing in the entire city. So this all government employees used to work for both the states of Haryana, Punjab, and the Union Territory, which has its own administration. The decadal growth of the population has been changed. As I said, initially the population was very less. Then of course there was started increasing in the 60s, beyond 66 when reorganization happened. So we had decadal growth of 394%, which kept reducing to about 17% in the last decade, 2001 to 2011 decade. This is also because there was after 1966, 2 cities of, I'll just explain that in the regional plan, 2 cities of Panchkula and Mohali emerged. I think we are sitting in one of the cities which came out of it. This is our future, what we have kind of envisaged. The vision for our city in the future is that it should be an administrative city and protect, retain, enhance its green city character and conserve its architectural planning idioms, while still striving to reduce the special socio-economic disparities. The capital city will become a knowledge center, new frontiers of generating employment opportunities to education, healthcare hub with good facilities for sports. I must say that all these facilities are still very, very well provided in the city. There are facilities for every kind of sport in the country, in which a man needs. Whether you go in for water sports, whether you go in for equestrian, shooting. We have one of the best shooting ranges in the country. Of course, it's being renovated and being brought, because it might be the only shooting range which will have shooting facilities from a pistol to a heavy bore. Only one, including army or the air paramilitary forces. Nobody has such a facility. But we had area earmarked for that. It is in a huge pocket of about 60 acres, but it has been not being properly used, and we're trying to bring it up to an international standard so that we can even conduct some. This all actually the attention got back when we got a gold, when we got a medal in Olympics after Abhinav Bindra, and he has some origin in the city as well. So that bring in that a lot of people might be interested in that. Whether it is education, we have got 110 government schools in the city for just 50 sectors, and more 80 private or public sector schools. So and number of bed capacities, tertiary care capacities is higher than any of the city in the country. Per capita green cover is the highest in the country. So that way our plan had great strengths to help us kind of build on. Of course, now there are problems of overpopulation enhancement. The city will continue to facilitate, promote, enhance its capital function, because this being an administrative city for 2 state capitals, we'll still try to enhance that rather than not focusing on any other economic activity. In say ecological footprint and climate change reality, the capital will be eco-friendly state-of-the-art technologies. This also we are aiming at, and we have built a green code for the city as well. It will synergize the shared responsibility in the management of critical infrastructure. Yes, please.
Considering that it is capital of 2 states,
Yeah.
and itself a union territory,
Yeah.
the population of say 12 lakhs or
Yeah. 12 lakhs.
it's too less.
Yeah, because it is, if you talk of the region, we might be, because Panchkula and Mohali, we might be about 20 lakhs. And it is. But I think in proportion to our population, if you see entire Haryana and entire Punjab, I think we still, the economic capitals are separate, because Ludhiana, I think, has a lot of industry, and Amritsar has a lot of culture and religious tourism. In that sense, their strengths are still there. The states are still focusing their major activities within their states. Like Gurgaon has taken away the major lead in Haryana or the NCR. Because of the NCR proximity, I think Haryana's main focus is towards the NCR. And that takes away a lot of our load. In that sense, that is true. But Mohali has made a 2050 plan in which they themselves feel that their population will be 50 lakhs. Because I'll just explain to you in the regional context. This is the methodology. I'll just explain to you in the regional context if I have the slide. This is the regional context. I'll just explain you. As I said, there was a restriction of development around the city. This 16-kilometer periphery or the 10-mile periphery was not supposed to be developed. So that maintains garden city concept. But since the reorganization of this entire periphery got divided, and 74% of the periphery went to Punjab, 21% of the periphery went to Haryana, and we have just left with 3% with the Chandigarh. We could only have the urban development being a state subject was handled by the states. So they, in their own wisdom, decided to develop a city of Mohali south of Chandigarh on the same concept. And they are likely to, in the entire region, likely to develop, I think, 127 sectors, and they are aiming a population of 50 lakhs by 2050. So we will actually be a very low density core, which is unlike any cities in the world. We will be unlike, because most of the cities have a very dense core, and then they have urban sprawl across. But we will have a opposite kind of a parameter, which we will have to handle differently. And then Haryana decided to have Panchkula on the eastern flank with about 30 sectors and about 2.5 lakh population at the moment. But I think they are also, with their region around, they'll also kind of reach 20 lakhs in another 30-35 years. That's what. So the entire region, to our sense, will reach about 70-80 lakhs by 2050. And we'll have to look at it in a regional plan solution rather than just a city-specific science solution. For that, we'll have to take the cooperative instance from the states of Haryana and Punjab. Center is, of course, coordinating in that. The Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development, is the chairman of the committee which does that interstate linkages. And our secretaries of Punjab and Haryana and our advisor is the member for that committee. And we are looking at doing something in the regional context in that sense. A regional plan is being formulated. This is broadly the land use. As I said, initially we were not willing to develop our periphery. We were only concentrating on the grid. On the grid, we had these sectors, about 47 initially, and now they have been extended to 56 sectors. Since Mohali had already built on the same plan, we have just filled in the phase 3 with sectors which are left in between. So some of part sectors are in Mohali and part is in Chandigarh. So one sector is also divided between Mohali and Chandigarh. So that since they continue to the same size as the sector, we have been able to manage with the same road network, same systems, and we are trying to cooperate in terms of whatever we can share with each other. We don't have any power source, so we are dependent on these states for that. We have no power source either on the central power grid, so or we are going in for solar power in a big way very recently, but that will only cover to about 10% of our power needs. The water supply is all given by Punjab. There is that we are signatory to that BBMB thing. For Bhakra, feed is being given to us, and we are now recently being given phase 5 and phase 6 of Kajoli, where we are trying to aim for a 24/7 water supply for the city under the smart city project. That is one of the endeavors. In the master plan, what we basically did was that we accepted the reality that there is regional development all around, and we have identified 17 pockets all around where we will now do planned development, so that ramshackle development doesn't happen, which was happening like in the areas of Zirakpur. As you enter from Delhi side, you will see Zirakpur and Kharad, everywhere ramshackle development. So we thought that we will rather do a planned development and let low density, low rise developments be encouraged, so that the plan continues in the periphery as well. This is the allocation of the land use which we have targeted. Residential is about 40%, commercial is 5%, transport is about 7.5%, and this is on very good parameters. We have just increased the public and semi-public from 9% to 12% in these 16 years. Recreation from about 8% to 10%, because our recreation was very good. Pro rata, our data is very good as to the UDPFI guidelines, which the ministry has recently given. As I said, these are the 17 pockets with a specific land use, and we have tried to fit in whatever is the future need of the city. This is the stream organization issues I was explaining, which we need to. There is Mohali in the There's Mohali in the southern edge and Panchkula in the eastern edge. This is almost going to become the entire region, and we have to have transport systems, water supply systems. We have recently got that international airport, which is located in Mohali, but it is kind of called Chandigarh International Airport. In these decades, as we know, there are other plans notified by the respective states. There are these plans notified for Panchkula extension, Panchkula, Kotbela urban complex plan. Then there was this MDC plan and Panchkula complex plan. These plans were notified by the town planning departments of Haryana within the periphery of Chandigarh, and there were these 7 developments which are happening in the periphery. As I said, this is the new plan which Mohali has envisaged. They have got a plan made from a company in Singapore, Jurong, and they have developed a new city called New Chandigarh towards our western flank, which was the only area left for not being developed as yet. That plan also been developed by Jurong, and so we'll have an entire urban region in this. We are also thinking of doing a NCR kind of thing, but states are not agreeing for that.
When was this contract given to this Singapore?
I think this Mohali gave about 8 years back. They gave the plan in 2 years. So about 5-7 years back, this was earlier. They were just the town planning department was doing their own. There were some 20 sectors they had carved out themselves. But this new plan has been developed, which has done overlays of the transport systems, the services which need the supporting infrastructure, and they are also done specific focused land uses like industrial, mixed land uses. They have also done TODs in this whole thing, the transit oriented development corridors, which are the new paradigms in the this entire area is, as I said, the entire periphery is getting covered. This 16-kilometer belt we had kept. This area is almost 2 times our area. So we are about 140 square kilometers. They are about going to cross 200 square kilometers area. So this entire conglomeration is likely to be 350 square kilometers area. Sorry. The traffic transportation system, of course, has been studied in detail. This is a shortcoming of this city the present. This is the most challenging thing which we have. We have to strengthen a public transport system. We have been working on this for the last 10-15 years, but not reached anywhere, only because of the regional issues. the states have to share their finances, because Chandigarh per se does not need such a very strong investment. But there is more than 1.5 lakh people who travel to Chandigarh, because most of the public social infrastructure, whether it is education, health, culture, recreation, everything is on the mother city of Chandigarh, and Mohali, Panchkula have very, very minimum. Haryana still has provided many of the services which are in public domain, like they have civil hospitals, they have government colleges, they have government schools. But Mohali has very less. They hardly invest anything in public domain. Most of it is private sector. Whether they are schools, hospitals, educational facilities, their major campuses, they are all private sector. So there, it is very difficult for people to afford all that. So they all come to Chandigarh, and they have a much larger region for us. We have more than 1.5 lakh people coming to our city every day, and we have highest per capita vehicular density, which is not a thing to boast of, but which is causing a lot of problems, because we have more than 10 lakh vehicles registered for about 12 lakh population, which is causing a lot of congestion. Since we have a very large road area, we have about 1250 kilometer of road length. That is why it is quite dissipated. But it is going to choke very soon, because our cores are still the same. We are trying to find that solution in the master plan as well. We are trying to distribute our work areas, distribute a new IT park has come on the eastern flank, so that work areas also spread and people try to change their travel modes and distances. The master plan suggested these patterns: a metro system, BRTS systems, augmenting the city bus system, and then we planned 2 more bus stands. The road infrastructure was to be augmented, parking facilities had to be provided, and this all had to be done under one greater Chandigarh Transport Corporation, which had to have 25% share from Punjab, 25% from Haryana, and rest of it from Chandigarh. So that has not fructified in that sense. It has to be done in coordination with the Ministry of Urban Development, which is taking small baby steps into this, and the states back out of their own compulsions of finances in their own city. The metro project has not been found viable by the ministry, although states had agreed in their cabinets to fund it, but they said that at least the maintenance of the project has to be done by the corporation itself. And they were looking at 8% rate of return, as Jaipur Metro or Kochi Metro has probably given, which we are not able to achieve with the ridership anticipated in 2040. So they are now asking us to relook into the whole plan, and probably metro is not likely to come, but we are trying to augment our bus services and do more cycle tracks. 65 kilometers of cycle tracks have been planned very recently, and we're trying to make a bicycle integrated, because city is very small for the within the city travel. And there are a lot of young people. There are a lot of single people staying because of job compulsions, and they can all cycle to their workplaces. And workplaces are just 10 to 15 minute cyclable distances. So it is not a very difficult challenge. Only we have to provide the right infrastructure and the right facility. So a proper bike sharing system is also being planned, and hopefully should happen within the smart city project. This is the basic corridors. As I explained, these are the 2 corridors in the phase 1 which we are envisaging, and rest of the metro are in phase 2 and phase 3. The green ones are the BRTS corridors which we are planning to do for the city. The key challenge, as I said, it was non-viability of the metro system involving multiple stakeholders. The memorandum of understanding has now been signed by last year the President of France was in Chandigarh with our Prime Minister. So they have signed an agreement. Now AFD has given us a €1 million grant for re-study of our transport system. I hope it doesn't take us as many years as the first study took us, because otherwise it will be difficult for people to move in the city. This they have given us, and they are, to my sense, I have had a few interactions with them. They are trying to say that metro be not built and their own technology solutions be given. They are trying to promote their own businesses, to my interest, to my mind. But let's see which way it goes. It will all depend on the reaction from the states of Haryana and Punjab as well. The delay in metro, I think we are trying to push the BRTS corridor so that at least some relief is given. Then there is an absence of last mile connectivity, which we have started planning. There is extreme dependence on private vehicles and IPT, because the city is small. Nobody tends to go in for, and the average speed of movement is very high. The public transport world over becomes popular only when the average speed of travel reduces between 15 to 20 kilometers per hour. But our average speed is at the moment 35 kilometers per hour. So we have to reduce it by half only then it will become popular. Otherwise, people don't waste their time to go to the bus station or to the IPTs to metros to, because it takes some time to take the ticketing solutions, then get out of the station. And our city is so small, even on a two-wheeler or a car, it takes 5-10 minutes to go across the city, which is a challenge for us to accept. Or we cross-subsidize them. Pollution is another angle to it, which we are facing now. Unlike Delhi, we have a very good green cover, but our parameters are also now deteriorating with very high vehicular density solutions. We don't have clean fuel at the moment, but we might tend to go in for clean fuel, as Delhi experimented some years back with CNG and LPG. We are also trying to aim to that in the moment. The floating population is very high. The measures which we are thinking is expediting the MRTS, implementation of the new bus routes. This we have ordered. I think this should happen within this year. So this is under process. Improving the facilities of pedestrian is also under process. Improvement of junctions, because cycle tracks are there. There are already 80 kilometers of tracks, but they are not used, because at every 800 meters or 1.2 kilometers there is a junction where the traffic merges, and there are a lot of fatal accidents in that situation. So we also don't find us children to be safe. When we were very young in the city, we used to all cycle because the vehicular density was very low. But now it has become very difficult. It's unsafe on major roads too, because people drive on very fast pace, wide roads, and people drive very fast. The fatality rates are high. There is an improvement of road stretches need for the public transport systems, which we are planning. The incorporation of the bus bays and bus queue shelter, incorporation of cycle tracks, as I said. The implementation of the RUBs for inter-regional connection is also under process. The railways is helping us in some way, and some interstate cooperation is. We are implementing in the first phase the intelligent traffic management system for the entire city. That should improve our traffic system by about 30 to 35%. It will be a sensor-based solution where to the entire city. They have gone and done some research on smaller cities, similar size cities in Europe and North America, in which they have implemented. Of course, it is not 100. It cannot be 100% successful in India, because the type of traffic is very different. We have a very mixed traffic. They have segregation of high speed, low speed, and segregator. We don't have that category. All our traffic merges within the road, whether it's a Thela or it's a high speed Audi. So that's a challenge which we'll need to do, and that's why it's getting delayed. Our software solutions are taking more time to kind of evolve out of it. This is underbridge, railway underbridges. Yeah. These are the pockets. Then we have identified, we have just about 3,000 acres area left for the entire city. The land is a major challenge. We have very, very scarce land. For all future needs of the city, we have just 3,000 acres. So that's almost just 10 sectors. And we have to keep some reserves for the future as well. Since the periphery was the future in the early instance, now we have eaten away that future as well, and we must leave something for the future generations to handle. That's another challenge. And the demand has suddenly increased, because initially the rates were very less. Now the housing is another challenge. The housing for all schemes which the government has launched, it will be difficult to accommodate all people who have needs in the city. The real estate rates are very high. I think they're pretty high for the average income here in the city. So people are moving to the periphery, Zirakpur, Mohali, Panchkula or Panchkula extension. The methodology of land acquisition has become very complicated by some changes in the laws. So that's another challenge. Earlier we used to acquire through a process, because now we'll have to give the options of land pooling, or even but they have done some solutions in Mohali, but they have not been very successful, because then you don't get a fully planned area. You might get some pockets which are fully planned, unlike what we do in Chandigarh. And then the private landowners tend to hold on to their land. These needs major policy changes, which we think we still have to consult the Government of India for that. A change of land use policy, I just said. On the e-governance front, I think I'll just focus on one issue. We have gone in for a land management system. A LIDAR survey is being done for the entire 140 square kilometers. We have already launched the RFP for that. So the entire revenue records for the city will be on a e-platform, and I think we were also looking at some solutions which Delhi has done. Some areas, I think Ministry of Rural Development had been spearheading a project, and we have done it for 2 villages in our city. On the same basis, all our plan approval systems probably will get into it. Our plan approval system is also very cumbersome at the moment because of very tough regulations. We are trying to come into an online building plan approval system and working very hard on it. We've simplified our bylaws as far as possible, and they should be notified within a week's time. But by 31st March, we have to have an online building plan process with no human interface and has to be done within 30 days. That is a major challenge which we are facing. The population projected, I have just said that we have to accommodate about 4 lakh population, and our area is very less, just about 365 acres. So 1100% per acre density is required if you try to do that, and our heights don't allow so much of density to be done. Even Delhi has 400 or 500% per acre densities. So we have to look at redensification solution somewhere. This is the vacant lands, the residential unit calculations, landlord policy. I think we will, I'll broadly not deliberate much on the master plan to that extent, because smart city is also to be discussed. As I said, that we have to first ensure that there are institutions which have not fully utilized their existing land banks and still asking for more, like PGI and Punjab University have been committed about 100 acres each in the master plan. I think if we can leverage some land out of them, and then they have been committed about 100 acres each for this, which is almost a sector for us, and we will be able to do. So we are going on for a very high density development in the southernmost corridor of 7.2 kilometers of Vikas Marg, where we are allowing 10-story buildings, 10 to 12-story buildings we'll allow, and it will be a TOD corridor to reduce the traffic movement. It will have mixed land uses, it will have all parameters, and for which we are focusing on the development of the sub-city center in the smart city plan. Then we have to look at the revision of the density norms. No new plotted development shall be allowed, only apartments shall be allowed, and high-rise buildings will have to be planned. The challenges I have mostly listed. There are after the notification of the master plan, new projects from central government have been coming, like Amrut, Smart City, then Hirday, and we have to kind of housing for all. Housing for all is another challenge, because if you have to accommodate all the people who we are envisaging, we don't have space for them. Either we rejig our land uses, or we do a change in the land development policies, which is going to take time, because every policy gets vetted from the central government, and it takes a lot of time. They don't have focus on Chandigarh. I think Delhi is a much larger focus for them. So every time a policy is sent, take 2-3 years to get it approved in the ministries of Delhi. Because we are a union territory, every fund comes from the central government, every approval has to be taken from the central government. All policy changes are done in consultation with the central government. Then of course unauthorized growth, which especially happened in the periphery, and integrated development of the region. I think the smart city challenge, which of course had a standard format to be given, we did analysis, and our vision was as close to as our master plan said, a vibrant and unique regional center, City Beautiful, which will allow sustainability, quality and innovation. Basically, we were trying to build on our strengths and try to understand what the city needs. A detailed survey was done as was required in the smart city plan, and some area has been developed. The central area of the city, a vibrant and unique regional center. Then we had to have a model of quality urban life, resilient city, a healthy city, a center for innovations, and this model city of course had to have a unique mobility plan, because we were different from other cities in terms of our distribution network of roads. The smart city plan structure, as I said, had to be an area based development. So the central core of the city, as you can see in the red part, the central core, 4 sectors have been taken, for which all pilot projects are being implemented. Since this is the heaviest core in the city density as well, it will impact the maximum number of population. Sector 17 is the heart, which is the commercial center, and sector 43 is the vacant land, about half the sector, about 100 acres is left, which we are using as the economic leverage, where we are allowing those high mixed land use commercial development. So that is going to be the funding model for this entire project. They are going to do the smart grid, smart 24/7 water supply, safe and secure CCTVs, and all transportation modes on NFV mode. These are the basic interventions which are going to happen into project mode. At the present moment, the SPV has been formed, and this area is about 1265 acres. Learnings out of these will of course be replicated in all the other cities out of our own budgets. The reforms on urban governance is also are linked to it, and we'll try doing it with these. As I said that we are trying to also emphasize on the art and culture, community and compactness of the city for this whole thing. And there are projects emerging out of these areas as well. We are trying to make the whole process more democratic. The e-governance issues are being made pan-city, and then two projects which we had to do were these are the strategies and intervention, the project details which I am not going into detail. As I already said, recycle and reuse, activating plazas, Janmarg promenade being given to the public, art for everyone, facade controls being more managed at public places, and vehicle free zones being created, pedestrian mobility to be improved. Of course, then we have to add in new forms of transport systems as last mile connectivity. The strategy intervention, as I said, this is the last area where we are doing a district center with mixed land use. This is vacant at the moment, except for a district court and a judicial court complex here. We are leveraging a new sub-city center which will generate the funds for the smart city from our component. Some funds of course coming from central government as well, but we will use the land resource out of this area. And these are the two pan-city solutions, the smart integrated e-governance. I think you had a very good overview of what Haryana is doing just before me. I don't think so we are so well versed into my mind. The idea which we are building on is much basic to what they have probably dwelled on. And then the command and control center. This command and control center will of course be interdepartmental. This will for disaster management, for management of all the assets in the city, and under that LIDAR survey we are going to geotag every asset of the government, every asset, visual asset, or then we are going to go in for a survey underground as well, because we had the plans from the very beginning. We have whatever was laid except for the interventional and maintenance things which have been done by the different engineering departments over the period of time. So we are going to geotag every element and make a standard operating procedure so that reoccurrence of maintenance issues don't happen, and there are proactive solutions done by the government and the municipal corporation, especially in terms of the Swachh Bharat, and then these things are going to become grievance redressal mechanism solutions as well.
How good is your database as on date?
We have 100% Aadhaar seeded, yeah. For all those parameters, since we were a planned city, I think everybody has got a good base to work on, and we were fortunate to only have bureaucrats taking the control of the entire city from the very beginning, unlike the politicians in all other areas. So they were well educated and always wanted to get in best practices.
All development is by government or any private organization?
It is mainly funded by the government. We get grants from the central government and we generate our own funds. We have not done any auction. We have been auctioning our land since 1970s. There have been no other method of giving land except to the institutional areas or the government bodies. There is a fixed rate for giving it to government, central government and state governments.
So no government, no private colony development?
Only one project which came has not been done. It is done in Manimajra. Uppals have done one small project, but there were other projects which emerged like the theme city, film city, and they have never seen the light of the day. We have Medicity, they've all not been found. Then there was a recreational thing for world-class aquarium which was always released.
Mode of allotment is lottery or auction?
Auction. As I said, since 70s our residential plots, commercial plots have all been auctioned. So we give back, this all goes back to the central grant only, because it goes to the Consolidated Fund of India, it comes from Consolidated Fund, it goes back to Consolidated Fund. So it is all basically a central funded story, and till the first few years it was very well funded. Now of course we have to do reforms and make it self. There was no property tax till 2 years back. In the entire city there was no property tax and people are not ready to pay any parking charges. It is an over-pampered city, I must admit. People are over-pampered, they don't want to, because they are all kind of politically linked, and politicians have a lot of stakes. Both the state politicians have a lot of stakes in this city since they have been here for a very long time. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
I was wondering what will you do after that, because
That's exactly what I'm saying. Since we said that the plan is there, we have to find a land pooling policy, or we'll have to kind of take them on PPP mode solutions. It will depend on the quantum. That's the survey which we are conducting for land titling is one way to understand what is the dynamic policy we should generate so that it becomes successful. We have done some ventures which have not been successful in terms of private participations. Either we are not viable in terms of the people paying capacity or the willingness of people to pay. It has to finally come back to the private developer to.
Now the new concept is emerging. Actually, the concept of upload city. You have planned this Chandigarh for 5 lakh population.
Yeah.
How long do you think that we go? Because then you are expensive. You need more space.
Yeah, we don't have. Actually, to be very frank, Corbusier had initially said that we must first re-densify our phase 1 and only then build phase 2. Because he knew the examples from the cities development in Europe. So he knew that it is not that you first make a very green central core. So, and this was proposed by the master plan committee. But it was not accepted by the government because same reasons, the stakeholders are very important. People who are holding that phase 1 are very important. They could have their way into the whole story. But of course, time will take its own time. And in the next, by 2031, we are anticipating a population of just 16 lakhs. And that we are trying to cater. We are trying to cater, and a lot of pockets have been developed by housing. But we have been aiming for a slum-free city with a biometric survey since 2006-7. And more than 25,000 units were to be built. We have, I think, built about 16,000 at the moment. And that process was done on a biometric scale much before Aadhaar was even perceived. So that biometric study was done in 2006-7. Aadhaar, I think, was in, say, somewhere in 2011-12. And that process is going on, and we hope that we are able to have enough stock for people to be adjusted for all categories. Because Housing Board has only done projects of low income group in the last 10 years. Last decade, they have not provided for any middle class upper housing for them.
I have also seen around Panchkula.
Yeah.
Now I have seen this problem of gentrification going on. Because in other part of the city, I have seen the unit houses and all. But now the gentrification concept is coming. You can see high-rise buildings.
Yeah. We have also that's what I say. Mansa Devi complex is very close to our northeastern edge, which is an eco-sensitive zone. We have been trying to say that we not build it very high, but Mansa Devi is already allowed. There is no height restriction in Punjab and Haryana around our area. And we have restriction about just 3 to 4 floors in most of the city. Only in the new area of 7.2 kilometers, we said we are allowing 10-storied, which is having also a lot of opposition from the people, because we are re-densifying the third phase and pushing all our people into the southern part, while all our infrastructure is in the phase 1 or phase 2. So we are trying to add to the trip movement, which is not the ideal urban planning solution. But since we are constrained by the processes we have in the whole system, the re-densification of phase 1 will happen in the next master plan. I can assure you that even if it doesn't happen by our plan, it will happen by the market forces. Because those generations have changed. Most of the people in phase 1, only one single parent is staying with 2 dogs and 8 servants and all, and rest of the children have gone to USA or Canada or Europe. There is very, very low density. Hardly one person is getting 1 acre land, and that is not going to sustain when the third generation or the fourth generation comes. It will finally be sold off and builders will take over. And
Last 2 observations.
yeah.
What is that? Are you planning for Chandigarh metro and all, because you have Panchkula?
I said the metro had reached quite a lot. There was a geotechnical study. DMRC had done a study. Every technical report or DNID was prepared, and funding processes were, only agreement was to be signed between the 3 states and the union government. Now for the 25% of the union government share, they are saying that it is not a viable metro. That has gone through a process of 7 to 8 years. 3 or more studies have been done. We have a comprehensive mobility plan which has been done. But now because of that 25%, and our new MP is not in favor of that. We have only one MP in union, and that's the only way we can do that. States don't want to focus anything on Chandigarh. That I must honestly admit. They want to use this as a capital, but their main focus is on the development of the states. They generally don't contribute as states capital to that in that terms.
And the last one is that, as you are telling that you have just imposed property tax fees only.
Yeah.
In terms of sustainability, can you tell me the revenue sources of this Chandigarh
Yeah.
And because I was again reading in the newspapers that it is in the financial condition. And in terms of sustainability, what is the city?
It is in a very bad state. I am saying that imposition of property tax has just been notional, and that has been done after a lot of hue and cry from the people all around. 1 rupee per square yard property tax is there. So you can understand what it is. The collection charges are almost 70% of what we collect. So it has just been notionally done to get the reform agenda right. It is just to show the central government we have done the reform, but there is no collection in that sense, and it is just notionally done. Slowly and slowly, if we start providing, probably the people, there is a momentum which is building on. Because of these smart city things, a lot of these participatory processes have let the people also think that how they are going to sustain. We have a very, very high green cover. We have more than 2600 patches of green cover in the green areas in the city. And for a city of this scale, even if you try to contribute into that, there were PPP modes given in for maintenance of the greens, which is also not happening in a very good manner. Some RWs have taken the initiative and done a few pockets, but rest of the city is still being maintained by the municipal corporation. And the other revenue sources which we are thinking, we have give them a grant about 200 crores every year. 200 crores is given by the administration in the initial phase for handling the primary education and the primary health, which they are also still not investing on. The investment is still going on from the administration side. And there is a lot of, the 74th, 75th amendment has not been fully done, and municipal corporation is only handling the water supply, the water disposal and the solid waste management. These are the three activities they are primarily doing. Parking, of course, is one of the revenue sources for them, but they are not managing it well because people are not ready to pay any parking. There is only 5 rupee parking for the whole day. So that's what I say. People are really pampered here in that sense, and they'll have to change themselves if the city has to maintain its character. They are allowed that. They have, but still the response has not been very good. We are not actually not been doing a very fair thing. Now with all these e-tenders and e-governance, I hope we have a better method to generate revenues.